Imagine a time long ago. It is the 1400s. There are no planes, no cars, and no internet. People in Europe loved spices. They wanted pepper, cinnamon, and cloves to make their food taste better. They also wanted beautiful silk cloth and sparkling jewels. All these wonderful things came from a faraway place they called the Indies, or Asia. Getting these goods was very difficult and very expensive. Merchants had to travel a long, dangerous road called the Silk Road. They crossed deserts and mountains, and the journey took many, many months. Because the trip was so hard, the spices and silks cost a lot of money by the time they reached Europe. So people started to think, was there a better way to get to Asia? Could they travel by sea instead of by land? The country of Portugal was already trying. Their sailors were exploring the coast of Africa. They hoped to go all the way around Africa to reach India and the Spice Islands. It was a good idea, but it was also a very long journey. A man from Genoa, Italy, had a different idea. His name was Christopher Columbus. He was a sailor and a map maker. He had read books and looked at maps. He believed the world was round, like a ball. Not everyone agreed, but Columbus was sure of it. Columbus had a bold and exciting plan. If the world was round, he thought, he could sail west to get to the east. He could cross the Atlantic Ocean and land right in Japan or China. This would be a much faster route than going all the way around Africa. It was a shortcut. He just needed someone to give him ships and money for the journey. He asked the King of Portugal for help, but the king said no. His experts thought Columbus was wrong about how big the earth was. They thought the ocean was much wider than Columbus believed. So Columbus went to Spain to ask for help from its king and queen. Queen Isabella and King Ferdinand of Spain were very busy. They were fighting a war to unite their country. Columbus had to wait for a long time. For years, he pleaded his case. He showed them his maps and explained his ideas over and over again. Finally, in 1492, the war ended. The king and queen were ready for a new adventure. They wanted their country, Spain, to become rich and powerful. Finding a new sea route to the Indies could do just that. They decided to take a chance on this determined Italian sailor. They gave Christopher Columbus 3 small ships, the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. His great voyage was about to begin. In August of 1492, Columbus and his crew of about 90 sailors left a port in Spain. They sailed out into the vast, unknown Atlantic Ocean. The sailors were brave, but they were also very scared. No one had ever sailed this far west into the open sea. Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into more than a month. The men grew restless and nervous. They saw nothing but water, water, and more water. They worried they would run out of food and fresh water. Some sailors wanted to turn back. They thought they would sail off the edge of the world or get lost forever. It was a very tense time on the 3 small ships. Columbus was a skilled navigator. He watched the stars and used a compass to guide his ships. He also kept 2 logbooks, or diaries. In one, he wrote down the real distance they traveled each day. In the other, a fake one he showed the crew, he wrote down shorter distances. He did this so the sailors would not panic about how far they were from home. He kept telling them that land was near. He pointed to birds flying overhead and floating seaweed in the water as signs. He had to keep their hopes up. The journey was much longer than he had expected. Even he was starting to worry. The ocean was much, much bigger than he had calculated. Then, after more than 2 long months at sea, it happened. On October 12, 1492, a lookout on the Pinta shouted, "Tierra! Tierra! That means land! Land!" in Spanish. Everyone rushed to the deck to see. In the moonlight, they could see a low, sandy beach. They had made it. The next morning, Columbus and some of his men went ashore in a small boat. They planted the flag of Spain in the sand. Columbus was sure he had reached the Indies, the islands off the coast of Asia. He called the native people he met Indians because he was certain he was in the Indies. He had no idea how wrong he was. Columbus explored the islands of the Caribbean for a few months. He visited islands that we now call Cuba and Hispaniola. The people who lived there, the Taino, were peaceful. They had never seen people like Columbus before, with pale skin and strange clothes. They had never seen such large ships. Columbus was looking for the grand cities of China and the gold of Japan. Instead, he found small villages. He found people who grew corn and tobacco, things Europeans had never seen. He collected some gold trinkets, colorful parrots, and even brought a few of the native people with him to prove he had found new lands for Spain. He sailed back home a hero, still believing he'd found a new route to the east. When Columbus returned to Spain, he was greeted with a huge celebration. Everyone was excited. He had sailed west and found land. He had brought back strange plants, exotic birds, and people from a place no one in Europe had known. The king and queen were very pleased. They believed Spain now had its own route to the riches of the East. Columbus made 3 more voyages across the Atlantic Ocean. He explored more islands in the Caribbean and even touched the coast of South America. But he never found the great cities of gold he was looking for. He died in 1506, still convinced he had reached Asia. But other people were starting to have doubts. One of them was an Italian explorer named Amerigo Vespucci. He also sailed across the Atlantic, exploring the coast of South America. After his voyages, he wrote about what he had seen. He realized that this land was not Asia. It was too big and too different. He said it was a new world. A German mapmaker read Vespucci's accounts. In 1507, he made a new map of the world. On this map, he named the new lands America in honor of Amerigo Vespucci. And so the continents got their name. It was a whole new hemisphere that Europeans never knew existed. Columbus's journey opened a door, and soon a flood of other explorers rushed through it. They came from Spain, Portugal, England, France, and other European countries. They were all looking for something. Some wanted gold and silver. These were the conquistadors, or conquerors, like Hernán Cortés, who fought the Aztec Empire in Mexico, and Francisco Pizarro, who conquered the Inca Empire in Peru. They were searching for legendary cities of gold. Others wanted to find a way through or around America to get to Asia. This was called the Northwest Passage. Explorers like John Cabot, sailing for England, and Jacques Cartier, sailing for France, mapped the coasts of North America searching for it. These explorers were incredibly brave, sailing into unknown waters and facing incredible dangers. They mapped new coastlines, rivers, and mountains. Ferdinand Magellan's expedition was the first to circumnavigate the globe, meaning it sailed all the way around the world. Though Magellan himself died on the journey, his crew proved once and for all that the Earth was round and that the Americas were separate continents standing between Europe and Asia. The age of exploration was in full swing. The maps of the world were being redrawn. A new chapter in world history had begun, all because one man dared to sail west. The age of exploration changed everything. It was like 2 different worlds colliding. For the people in Europe, it was a time of great excitement and new possibilities. They learned about new lands, new plants, and new animals. Ships brought back potatoes, tomatoes, corn, chocolate, and tobacco from the Americas. These new foods changed the way people ate in Europe forever. Imagine Italy without tomatoes, or Ireland without potatoes. The gold and silver that came from the Americas made countries like Spain incredibly wealthy and powerful. This new wealth fueled more exploration and the growth of mighty empires. For the people already living in the Americas, however, the arrival of the Europeans was a disaster. The explorers and the settlers who followed them brought things the Native Americans had never known, including guns, steel weapons, and horses. But the most deadly things they brought were invisible. They brought diseases like smallpox, measles, and the flu. The native peoples had no immunity to these European sicknesses. Millions and millions of people, perhaps as many as 9 out of every 10, died from these diseases. Whole civilizations and cultures were wiped out. It was one of the greatest tragedies in human history. The meeting of these 2 worlds is called the Columbian Exchange. It was the transfer of plants, animals, technology, ideas, and diseases between the Americas and the old world of Europe, Asia, and Africa. From Europe to America came wheat, sugar, coffee, horses, cows, and pigs. From the Americas to Europe came corn, potatoes, tomatoes, and turkeys. This exchange changed diets and economies on both sides of the Atlantic. It connected the world in a way it had never been connected before. But it was not an equal exchange. The Europeans benefited far more, often at a terrible cost to the original inhabitants of the Americas. So the legacy of Columbus and the age of exploration is complicated. It was a time of incredible bravery, discovery, and new knowledge. It connected the globe, and started the story of our modern world. But it was also a time of conquest, violence, and great suffering for the native peoples of the Americas. Understanding this history means looking at all the sides of the story. We remember the courage of the explorers who sailed into the unknown, but we must also remember the millions of people whose world was changed forever by their arrival. It's a powerful lesson about how the actions of a few can change the world for everyone.